Hello and welcome to Buy Africa, the show where we focus on investment opportunities around the continent. I'm Tshepo Modiba, and thanks for joining me. Tonight I'm joined by Esili Eigbe, Director and Head of West Africa Research at Exotix, and today we're taking a closer look at Nigeria's breweries. Esili, thank you for joining us on the show. The sector as a whole, it seems as if volumes haven't quite gained the traction that investors thought of. And from an operational perspective, some of the businesses seem to be struggling a little bit. Your take on the sector as a whole?
First of all, thank you very much for having me on the show, Tshepo. To start with your question, I really believe that what we've seen is merely a slowdown over the last 2 years. We estimate that the sector volumes were probably flat in 2014, but it doesn't really change the long-term outlook in my view. We're still very optimistic about the beer market in Nigeria and also Africa as well. So what we've seen in Nigeria is pretty similar to what we've seen as well across other African markets, with the exception that, I would say for across Africa, we're still seeing growth of anywhere between sort of 4 to probably 5% growth. Nigeria, on the other hand, has been flat, but this is basically reflecting a relatively weaker macro economic backdrop.
Right. So your view is that this is more of a cyclical downturn rather than a strategic slower growth period for the sector.
That is correct.
Okay. Now, I guess, what does that mean from a competitive pressure environment? Are we likely to see increase in competition in the sector as a whole?
I mean, clearly it would. You obviously have the different players, particularly majors, obviously fighting for market share. And that's pretty much what we've seen over the last couple of, I'd say, months, quarters. It's just been movements, in market share amongst the major beer producers. Obviously, leading in terms of market share gains has been SAB Miller. To be honest, I think they've displayed exceptional execution on the ground, and I think that goes to reflect, SAB Miller's really strong African background. So even though they're relatively new players in Nigeria, they brought obviously to bear some of the experience that they had in Southern Africa, where I'd argue that structurally, there are similarities, with some of the African markets that they are now obviously playing in, particularly in Western Africa and probably also Central Africa as well. But I think that they have made significant strides in Nigeria, where I estimate that market share is probably closing in at 10%. Remember that they only came into Nigeria around 2007-8. Yep. So I think that's a very strong feat for them. Guinness Nigeria has also made some gains in market share. It seems to me that Nigerian breweries has been the loser on the other hand.
Right. Let's start off with the discussion drilling down into Nigerian breweries and looking at how that business is doing operationally. You've touched on them losing market share. Is there anything that they can do to reverse that trend?
Well, I think that's a very tough question, in that the movements we've seen somewhat reflect the structure of the portfolio of the respective brewers. Right. Now, if we look at the guys who are gaining market share, SAB, what has really, helped SAB to succeed has been its focus on affordable beer, right, which prior to its entry in 2008 was probably non-existent in Nigeria, or not really commercialized as it currently is. And so that's what's really helped to help SAB Miller grow its volumes. In fact, if you look at the business they have in the East, that business is growing very strong, double-digit, over 22% sort of year-on-year growth. Now, if we come to Guinness, what is really helping Guinness to gain market share is innovation, particularly around herbal drinks. I reckon that given the success that they've had over the last year, I mean, they've been able to grow volumes in that particular product. This is Origin, by about over 1 million hectoliters. That's actually phenomenal. No brewer in the world, achieved such a feat within the span of about 12 months. So I would actually argue that a product like that, herbal, probably deserves its own category as opposed to RTD where it currently is. Now, if we now focus on Nigerian breweries is predominantly a lager or mainstream lager beer producer, and which is really contrary to the trends we're seeing at the moment. We're seeing actually a downward trade from mainstream lager to affordable lager. And although Nigerian breweries is obviously expanding its proposition within that that category or segment, it clearly takes time. You're seeing growth in Nigerian breweries' affordable portfolio, but that is not sufficiently countered by weakness in its mainstream beer portfolio, which, you know, I guess to put some context to that, represents more than 50% of its portfolio.
Right. Okay. Now, we touched on volumes or market share losses in particular. What do margins look like? Have they been able to keep margins fairly stable in this sort of environment?
Margins are weak across the board, with the exception of Guinness, which is coming from a relatively low base. You're seeing the strong double-digit volumes they're currently witnessing, obviously playing through to the bottom line and helping margins to expand. But again, as I said, it is coming from a low base where, you know, its EBITDA margins were, you know, slightly lower than 20%. Normalized levels will be slightly above 25%. Nigerian breweries, on the other hand, because of the challenges I already pointed out with respect to volumes, in addition to that, the fact that they're diversifying, expanding the portfolio to include affordable beer has meant some dilution in margins as well. Right. Now, speaking about SAB Miller, which again is a formidable player in the market, what has happened is that they're getting to a point where, you know, some of the regional markets are now quite saturated, and they now have to invest more money in marketing and distribution, which has meant some dilution as well relative to the historical high margins that they have experienced in the market.
Right. You touched on Guinness's margins in particular widening. Is that a function of their Origins brand, or are the margins there looking particularly good?
It's really a function of Origin. Origin is a margin accretive product, and, you know, the fact that they've been able to also significantly expand volumes in that product has really helped. I think it'll be unfair as well to also, it'd be unfair not to give credit to some of the work they're doing with respect to improving operating efficiency. I think that they've come a long way in that regard. That has made some contribution, but emphasizing that, you know, the biggest contributor to the margin expansion has been Origin.
Okay. Now, we've touched on a soft patch in terms of the market as a whole, and your outlook going forward is fairly bullish. Which of, I guess, the three businesses that we've touched on are better positioned to I guess, to take advantage of an improved environment going forward?
I honestly still think that Nigerian breweries will be a preferred play from a long-term perspective. And I say that because, you know, relative to some of the other breweries, they've really managed to build a very strong local business, you know, which combines a portfolio of over 15 plus, you know, products, brands, and also a monster of a distribution platform, you know, that I believe none of the other brewers can replicate. Nigerian breweries is, in the true sense, a national brewer. Right. And I think that, you know, if we look beyond sort of the pitfalls of sort of the short term, I think that the medium to long term will be a very, very, you know, strong opportunity for Nigerian breweries. Now that they have decided to play affordable beer, no, I don't see any other brewer better positioned to exploit that opportunity. They've only just begun, and I believe that as they roll out that particular segment, they will certainly be very successful in that area. They're currently also exploiting herbal, but I think that they came into that game a little late. But nonetheless, I think they should see some success there as well.
So could it be argued that the current operational soft patch in terms of volume sales or market share has actually helped the business position themselves better for the long term?
That's correct. I mean, and to be honest, it's really helped everyone, not just Nigerian breweries. Even if you looked at Guinness as an example, Guinness has just come from a very, very bad position. And the introduction of Origin was basically a product of, you know, the challenges that it faced. You know, SAB Miller as well went through a similar patch as well, where I guess, you know, they built a business in Kenya and, you know, it wasn't successful as they had hoped. And so the approach to other African markets was basically a product of the lessons that they took from Kenya. So I really think that, you know, the relatively weak markets we've seen the last few years have definitely made, you know, these brewers much better players. But again, to reiterate, giving Nigerian breweries relatively more robust route to market, it's the best positioned brewer, not just in Nigeria, but in Africa, to really exploit, the under-penetrated beer market in the region.
Now, from a margin perspective, are we likely to see margins across the board improving from current levels or stabilizing at these sort of levels going forward?
I think it's fair to say that we can see some improvement, but limited improvement even over the next 3 to 5 years. I think that Nigerian breweries will likely see, Guinness will likely see the fastest expansion, but that's again coming from a significantly low base. But I think in real terms, I think that Nigerian breweries could obviously see some really strong expansion, reflecting, a sort of a better product mix as, we'll move beyond, the dilution that, affordable beer would obviously have on the overall portfolio, to a portfolio that now begins to reflect the strength of its mainstream brands when, volumes begin to recover again, and also the stronger sort of premium segment. I mean, they have Heineken at the moment as a very strong product within that segment, but they've also rolled out, Star Radler as well as a complement to that. So I think that, there's definitely very strong prospects for Nigerian breweries from a margin perspective and also volume perspective. Also important to highlight is that, beer at the end of the day is a volume game. So as long as you're really able to scale up volumes, that really ends up significantly impacting your margins positively. Right. Again, there's no other brewer, but Nigerian breweries, that is better positioned. We're talking of a brewery that, in the next 5 years or so could be producing more than about 15 to 16 million hectoliters of beer.
Perfect. Let's leave it there.
The second largest is Guinness, which would probably be doing around about 6 million.
Thank you, Esili. Let's leave it there. Thanks to my guest, Esili Eigbe, Director and Head of West Africa Research at Exotix. That's all from Buy Africa this week. Remember to follow me on Twitter. That's @Modiba_Tshepo, and send us your thoughts about the show using the hashtag BuyAfrica. From myself and the team, goodbye.